So nice to meet everybody. I'm Randee Keating from Newell Brands, as she mentioned. I'm super excited to talk about AI personas as well. This is actually my favorite topic to talk about at this moment in time. So Joy and I were actually talking last night and comparing notes, and we've had very similar experiences, but hopefully I can talk to you a little bit about how we've done it at Newell. So to give you a bit of background on me, so I am in consumer insights. I cover our learning and development team. So I cover brands like Sharpie, Papermate, Expo, Elmer's, and Graco, all the fun brands. And I've been with Newell for about 11 years. And I've been in research. I've been doing consumer insights for over 20 years. So for me, what really excites me about insights and what I like to do is try to think about how can I challenge my team to think a little bit differently? And how can I get people to really just inspire them to approach problems in a different way or think about what's possible so that I can ultimately get them to make better decisions. And the way I really like to think about my job is that I get to do all the fun bits of marketing, but I'm not really committed for actually having to execute it or take it into market. So I get the best of both. And I'm really fortunate in that I work with a team that is very focused on the consumer. And not only do we talk about them being at the heart of everything that we do, but we also put our money where our mouth is, and so we're investing. I recognize that's all relative. Some of you who are from really big CPG brands probably spend a lot more than we do, but I do recognize how lucky I am to be on the team that I'm on. So, but those of you who have a lot of data know that having more isn't necessarily always better. They still can be overlooked, your insights that can be forgotten. Sometimes it's even overwhelming when you come in and you don't really know where to start. How do I actually use them? And people who even have the best intentions might actually forget, did we even conduct a particular piece of work? Even my team sometimes forgets the work that we've done, so it can be a bit tricky. And reports can kind of, despite us trying to do the best possible presentations or us thinking about what kind of workshops we want to do to ingrain it into the business, the reports can end up on kind of a virtual shelf and people forget about them altogether. But that is where AI is coming in, and it's really changing how we interact with our data. And it's getting us to a place, or what we hope to be, where we're thinking about doing things faster, doing them cheaper, and also really getting us to better assets. And so, everybody's experiencing this. We're definitely at an inflection point with AI, but I really feel like for my industry in particular, we're really set up to kind of challenge the way that we've always done in research and to always think about, like, how do we go about insights in a new way. And, as Joy talked about, it can be very, people can feel a bit threatened and it'd be hard to engage, and especially when you're in a group that's very human-centric, it can be a bit challenging to think, okay, do I want to use AI? But for me, I got very excited when I started thinking about, okay, like how can I imagine those problems that I was talking about where people are forgetting my insights, but now I can actually make sure that they're always working in the background, they're always inspiring, always motivating people, and really making sure that we're helping people make better decisions. And quite honestly, sometimes even thinking about how do you use data? It's nice to have a lot of data, but not everybody always knows how to action it. So using AI is helping us think about how to bring that to life. And we are doing this with what we're calling AI personas, similar to kind of the approach that Joy was taking as well. But I think the difference in what we're doing, and some people talking about trying to be scrappy, is that we made the decision to use off-the-shelf tools that we can then go and customize. So think about your ChatGPT or your Microsoft Copilot, where you can take your custom data and actually put it in, and then create this dynamic tool that will work for you and help give you answers and can be responsive to your team members and kind of become that extra consultant on the team. So from that, they are able to take your data, and then that starts to allow them to tailor content and think about how you want to respond. So I'm going to show you a little bit, like it's very simple. I actually wish it were more complicated than this, but it is very easy to create. So you go in, you kind of tell it what you want it to do, give it instructions, kind of tell it what it's meant to, what its purpose is. Then you upload that content that you have, and really it just starts to digest the information very quickly. That gives it context, so it knows, okay, why are you asking me the questions that you're asking me? And then it starts to tailor its responses based on the data that you've given it. And I think Joy mentioned this too, that it just gets better and better. Not only does it gets better at understanding you and like what your prompts are, what you want, what's the format that you want it in, But it also starts, as you ask different questions, it starts to understand your business a bit better too, and so it just gets smarter the more that you work with it. And the tools are just getting better every day too. So not only can you create one, but you can create many. Here are a few of my friends of Mia, Sam, and Millie, and I'll show you how you can go in and ask them questions. In this example, we'd ask them, what is it that you like about writing? And so based off of the information that we've uploaded and given each one of them, they're able to have a conversation and start to give their own viewpoint. And so with that, you can really start to create personas for very different purposes. And so I've listed out a few here that my team tends to use. So the first one and the most obvious one for us was segmentation. A lot of our teams have recently conducted some segmentation work, and so we wanted to make sure for our top brands, we're able to really bring those segments to life for them. But also if you have shopper data or retailer-specific information, you can create one that's for that. A subject matter expert. I did some work on sleep a couple of years ago for my baby team. It was a bunch of work that we kind of moved on to a different project, but I wanted to make sure that work was still there and people could come back in and access it. So I created a sleep expert that we go and tap into anytime we have those questions. It can also be, you can put in your brand information and make it an expert on your brand and make sure that it's using the right language. Or you can even do specific use cases like one and done. I had an example not too long ago where my team was working on an application for something, and I had actually worked on I had a lot of data to help support the idea that they were working on for the application. So I threw it in and created a specific chatbot for this and helped them create the first draft of that application. So I'm finding lots of use cases for it. So I would say that more than anything, like despite the fact that I'm putting a lot of my consumer data in this, I see it more as a strategic kind of consultant or someone to help brainstorm with. And I don't think of it as a consumer for many reasons, but I think that they're definitely, like, as Joy was talking about, that extra team member and somebody to bounce ideas off of. So because it has all your information in it, it makes sure that as you're brainstorming and as you're talking, that it's keeping your ideas connected back to those insights. It's also just having this extra team member always ready. I can't tell you how many times now, like I'll be in a call with my actual team members where people are debating and they're discussing and trying to decide, is that the right word or what do we want to use? And all I want to do is get off the call and go use my AI friends because I feel like I could solve that problem in a couple of seconds. So, but one of the things I really love about them is creative writing. And if anybody has used ChatGPT, you know the power of writing. And especially if you're infusing it with your brand information or your consumer information, they're just really powerful and really great, especially if you work on innovation of getting to testable assets so much faster. The limitations are, at this point in time, we are not finding that they're predictive. Again, that's because I don't think of it as being a consumer. I do have a project I'm working on to see if I can get to a place where I can make them a little bit more predictive. But at this point in time, I would definitely recommend that you still do standard research to help validate. And they do skew a little bit positively. So you can see a quote where I'd asked, like, are you a people pleaser? And it's like, that's a fair observation. I do tend to lean on the positive side. So it's just kind of the way that they're trained, that they do tend to be that way. This has gotten better, I've noticed over time too. But it's just something to note when you're going and chatting with them. Okay. So we are using it a lot. We didn't have one big session, but we are using it a lot for innovation. I think that's probably the biggest place that we're utilizing it, just to get to those better assets much faster. So, a couple summers ago, I spent time with my team where we were taking all the insights that we had and trying to come out with specific innovation platforms. And it probably did take us the whole summer because we were working, we had to get everybody's schedule and get everybody in the room and start talking about it. And you can go in and put your data and your insights in, and in a matter of seconds, it starts to create key platforms for you to go after. I will say it doesn't necessarily come up with white space or new things that you would have probably never thought of. But again, it's just so good at organizing the information that you have and starting to really giving you a place to get started. It'll also kind of help you start to think about, okay, what are the spaces that are most promising? How do I start to write up those ideas? And then it can even help you get to a place where you can create images and get to prototyping so that you can go right into test. So ultimately saving time and money. So here are just some examples of some of the work that my team has been working on. So in addition to the so we're using more tools than just the AI personas. So we're using a group called Midjourney, if anybody's familiar, but our design team is using them to quickly go from having something on paper to starting to think about how do we actually bring that to life. We are doing ideation sessions too, where we're making them very AI focused. We're using the tools, so we've got Midjourney and we're using our personas. And so I have seen the same where it's like it really puts everybody on an equal playing field. And so if you were somebody who's a non-creative like myself, where before you could just sit and write on a Post-it and try to help people understand what your idea might be, it gives you that chance to help you visualize it in a way that you just weren't able to do before. So the nice thing about these sessions is that we were able to identify ideas, we were able to start drafting up what that initial idea might look like, and then visualize it. And then essentially I came out of the session with a testable asset that I could take right into test. So. And then our design team is also going from sketches to more fully formed prototypes with some of the tools that they've been using. And you can start to think about how do we want to visualize this? How do we want to go about communicating what our innovation ideas might be? And here you can just see a little bit of the work what I mean of taking like from a sketch to going really fast to fleshing out, okay, what's that design gonna look like? So I'm not that familiar with all the work that our design team does, but I imagine this was hours, if not days or weeks, that they managed to save. And so we're really using them for so many different use cases, and it's just been exciting to think about all the different ways that we can use them. And you can see, and I'm hopeful that mine shows you that it's actually quite approachable and that anybody can do it. And I think the thing that really sets people apart is having like that curiosity and wanting to use it. I know people that have access to this who kind of feel like they don't have time, but I think if you only think that if you haven't actually used them, because they help you be so much more efficient. And so it's really about thinking, okay, what are all the ways that I can use it and apply it, and how do I actually change the way that I work and how I think? So here are just some examples. I talked a bit about the concept writing. This would go from we were waiting on the marketing team to send us early concepts, where my team would then give feedback, a ton of back and forth. It could take weeks to get to a place to now my team actually comes with the information we have, and we say, oh, okay, here's what we're thinking. It's aligned to the brand. Here, it's aligned to your consumer. And then we can get to a final concept much faster. It's great with claims writing. I will say this is a little bit more like marketing puffery. It can kind of get you to like what are the key themes and what I want to talk about. Not as great on hard claims, but it can very quickly ideate and give you 100 different ways that you could go and talk about your product. I'm using it right now for some brand narratives. So for some of our brands that we had bigger budgets, we had hired an agency to help us with positioning. Now we have the tools, but we don't have the agency to come and help us. So we're leveraging this to help us think of how do we want to go about writing up our personas and bringing them to life. And then, as I mentioned with the segmentation, we're doing a lot of that work. And then as we want to get more specific and understanding who is our muse and who is our focus, then we're using this to help kind of bring them to life in a real way. We're also talking about different ways to partner. So once we have an idea of what our positioning is and who we're going after, if we wanted to do some partnerships, like who might actually be a good fit with us and what that could actually look like. We've started talking with retailers and using them in those conversations. We've experimented a little bit with owl reinvention and getting some inspiration. And then we've even dabbled a little bit in more gaming. So these are just some examples of different things that we're using, but I honestly feel like I come up with a new idea every day of how I can leverage this. So just to show you some of these examples, here you can see just how simple it is to go in and start asking about claims. Here the idea is that you could be working with multiple cross-functional team members. You might hire an agency. Now it's something that you can just do between insights and brand. It might have taken you weeks to do it before. Now it's something that you can do with hours and hours, if not less. You might spend thousands of dollars. Now you're not really spending anything except for the people's time that are working on it. This is a fun one. So I was in a strategy session with one of our brand teams, and somebody started talking about like, hey, what if we partnered with a fashion designer? And it happened to be that I had a session in the morning, and then there was a break And then there was a session later in the afternoon. So I was like, oh, let me go see what I can do before we come in for the later afternoon session. So I went in, I used one of our personas to start talking about, okay, are there new designers out there that we could partner with? So it gave me a list of names, and then I started asking it to give me a sense of what that might look like. And this is what it came up with. So it was just great to then be able to go into that afternoon session for a little bit of inspiration and say, look, this is what it could be. And I will point out, too, just talking about how they've gotten so much better, that when I started using them around March, and like when we first started talking to them and asking them to give us images, there was one that I remember like asking to show a woman writing, and the pen was like this huge, it was like sitting in her lap. And so like they've come a long way of like struggling to get to a place where they were like the right proportion. So now it looks mostly like a pen. It's probably not perfect, but it's getting there. Okay, so this is an example actually with a retailer in the UK. We were chatting with them. They were very interested in doing aisle reinvention. And so we had some consumer data in that market, but we didn't have money to go and spend on a whole aisle reinvention project. And so we were like, okay, what if we use this to kind of show them what's possible and how we could leverage these personas to help us get to a better place in the aisle. So you can kind of see, I won't play the whole video, but you can see how we brought that to life for our customer. So kind of showing her, bringing her to life, talking about the things that she likes. And then we showed them how we could actually create a chatbot for them to go and talk to them and to kind of help with the aisle. So the customer actually really loved this, and so I'm already in the process of thinking about some other customers that we can leverage this for later in the year. So aisle reinvention. So I have been working on an aisle reinvention project for like a year and a half. So I don't mean to suggest that this would take the place of any agency that you might work with, but what is very cool is that very quickly it can start to give you some inspiration around what your aisle might look like. And the interesting thing about this one is I was able to say, okay, well, what would it look like in a Target? Now, what if you put it in a Walmart? And then now can you put it into a Staples? And you can see how it's like quickly picking up on some of those different cues and what it knows about the different retailers to bring it to life. So I would say, at this point, AI is definitely changing the way we work, definitely has changed the way that I work and the way that I even think. I'm constantly thinking about how I can leverage it. But we've definitely just scratched the surface. But I am already seeing signs of us getting to a place where it's better, it's faster, cheaper. And that's really our goal of thinking about how we can use it to optimize and get to a better place. But the journey's just begun, and this is for the scary part. So here's where we are today. And this is where they're supposed to be going. I don't know if the timing is exactly right. I've seen some different things. I don't know if anybody's heard about agents, but apparently agents are coming in 25 or 26. And agents are basically like a chatbot, but now you can give them an objective, and they can go away and start to respond to your objective. So you're not giving task by task; they just go work autonomously. More is coming. So I hope I want to kind of inspire all of you, if you haven't used these tools yet, hopefully you see that how easy it is to get started. And also, not to put fear in you, but to think that this is coming, and I think it's a great time to start, investing and spending a little time and dabbling in it. So.
Randee, thank you so much. I don't know if I'm more impressed by all of the use cases you guys are doing or the number of transitions that you had in your PowerPoint slide.
I regretted the transitions a little bit.
Did AI do those transitions, or was that all you?
It
didn't. Questions? Look at, of course, I can always count on you. Do we even need to introduce yourself at this point?
I don't know. I won't then. No. You can. I just had a question for if someone's an advertiser and they want to get involved in this, but they have fears over privacy, what would you tell them?
So we were concerned about that too, and we have been engaging our legal team. Like, we have a whole group that helps vet different tools. So ChatGPT, who we ended up using for the personas, actually has where if you buy in membership, you can kind of get it where everything is protected and it is only in your environment. So there's nothing, we're very cautious about that. There's nothing that's going out that people would be able to access.
Hey there, over here. Jeff Williams with Perform. Thank you for this. It was wonderful. One question: when you let the personas talk to each other, what was the most interesting and/or scary outcome of that scenario?
Yeah, I will say so talking to each other is probably a bit of a stretch. They will engage, and you can get answers for each of them, and then come back and summarize it. It's not like they actually are having a conversation, necessarily reacting to each other. So I'm sure it'll get to that point, but it's kind of more about just being able to see them all in the same space and hear what they have to say.
Any other questions? Oh, one more.
Hi, I'm Jessica Edwards with Albertsons. You mentioned war games up there, but there wasn't much detail around that. Can you tell us more?
That's something that one of the guys on our team was kind of dabbling with. So we haven't started doing it fully. It's actually kind of something that excited me that I'm like, I want to go back and use it for it. So we haven't. I think that'll be something that we're trying out a little bit more of. But yeah, he was trying to build out one so they could start to think about okay, what if our competitor did this? What would that look like? So.
Randee, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.